Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. Our guest is Chance Garton, and we're so glad to have him here. And I'm going to read his bio for those of you that aren't familiar with Chance. Chance Garton is the host of InnerVerse, a podcast dedicated to prying open your third ear and showing you the reality of perpetual synchronicity. With 8 years of experience in podcasting, Chance has developed an effortless ability to maintain a positive vibe in conversational flow states. His knowledge in a wide variety of subjects allows him to see connections that others miss. Chance is also a Biofield Tuner and a seasoned energy worker and divination specialist, having helped hundreds of people around the world heal and align their mind and body. His consistent efforts at researching language, symbolism, and mythology fill his conversation with fresh insights. And all his contact information is below. And beautiful. I just wanted, before I give the floor to you, Chance, I wanted to comment on perpetual synchronicities. It's like, today was like that. It was like, the more you can stay centered and calm and tapping into your inner self, it's like beautiful synchronicities happen. Life is wonderful, right? Even when things that you are unexpected or not so much liked happen, it's all good. And
yeah,
so
gratitude will do it for you too. Like, I'm not some kind of perfect saint or anything. I had a dark kind of train of thought yesterday and, a little bit of a defeatist mentality about something. And then the reality of existence kicked in and I was like, but where's your gratitude, man? And then as soon as I pondered on the things I was grateful for, some of those things just showed up right in front of me. So, the synchronicity is definitely tied to gratitude. And apart from that, I like to talk about perpetual synchronicity in my bios because I think that that's what a podcast like InnerVerse and maybe this one too engenders for people, that the concepts and ideas that we discuss might start showing up in their life. And because they're positive, helpful, holistic, uplifting type of concepts, the way that they show up in people's life is uplifting, positive, helpful, healthy. That's kind of the goal, to fill your mind, fill your awareness with stuff that actually is edifying, constructive, even dare I say fun. And that's what life's all about, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Totally agree. So I don't think I've heard all of your story, Chance, about how you got into biofield tuning and podcasting and which came first. And so if you could tell us all a little of your story, I'd be glad to hear it.
Okay, yeah, sure. The story of becoming a podcaster maybe is not all that exciting. I'm one of those that began before I was ready instead of, after I was ready. That's kind of how I see it. I mean, not to knock my younger self, but I didn't have a whole lot of direction behind creating a show other than there were a lot of conversations I was having in my life that left me with this feeling of enthusiasm and energy, excitement, that I thought, this would be good to share with the world. And in particular, I was on a quest at that time, way back in the day, that I wanted to figure out what it was about some of these people that I was meeting, mostly in like the transformational arts festival scene, that allowed them to pursue what was their soul's purpose for existence and make it their livelihood. So I wanted to make a podcast that I could basically interrogate creative people and figure out what the secret is. Like, how do I get out of the rat race normie job and live a life that's fulfilling and rewarding and, materially secure as well? It turns out nobody could actually tell me the secret to that. Even people that were kind of like currently doing it. But along the way, I found my way to answer that question for myself. And it does involve the actually concept of perpetual synchronicity, because there is the leap of faith moment that you just got to jump and realize that you're supported by the source and singularity of all life. And in particular, if what it is that you're seeking to make out of your life is something resonant with the good, true, and beautiful, then the source of everything good, true, and beautiful is gonna, be the wind beneath your wings and allow it to be possible. And there's nonstop faith required with that type of a leap. So that was 8 years ago, almost at this point. And in that time, I've actually found the things I'm interested in. And although that changes all the time, of course, it wasn't really a show about energy healing and holistic health stuff at first. It was more just focused on the spiritual path that is creativity. Like, I think creativity is the only universal spiritual path, because it's the one thing that links all of us to the source, to the creator, the imagination. So that was my original real interest. And then in that time, I kind of discovered my own proclivity towards energy work, you could say, maybe a talent even. I developed that through practices like Qigong, which were put into my path in a very synchronistic way. And much later, actually 2020, so maybe like halfway through the story, that's when I came across Eileen's work. And what I heard her on Eileen McCusick on Crow 777 for the first time, or maybe on the Higher Side Chats, I'm not sure which. Or I don't know, a few podcasts all at once. You just, how it is when something comes into your orb of awareness in 3 different places, all within a close proximity to each other. It's like you kind of take note. And her information was really ringing a bell for me too. So I was able to heal a long-term injury that I thought I had sustained from rock climbing through getting a sonic slider tuning fork. I was able to, I say that the fork healed it. It facilitated the actual shift in my life and in my belief system that was necessary for the injury to heal. So the long and short of it is I got the sonic slider, started using it on my shoulder, and the energetic issue ended up being a back left heart chakra, so like back left shoulder situation, where I was taking on negative energy from other people from the world. And that was like me identifying with the taking on. You know how a lot of us kind of empathic people are. We'll set up these relationship dynamics where I'm the heroic, beleaguered empath just trying to help this mean old vampiric person reach their potential and be a better person. And, I'm just taking it because I'm so good. And really what it was my, kind of afraid of my own potential type of situation, you could say, or not afraid of my potential so much as like afraid of what if the limits of my potential are actually quite small. So maybe I don't ever go see how far the limits of my potential are. I think I still wrestle with that. I don't think that I've completely overcome that particular hurdle. Working on it though. The point was that I wound up out of, after getting the sonic slider within months, within days, the shoulder injury was healed. And then within a couple months, I was single again after a very long-term relationship and in a kind of whole new life. Had to go through a lot of difficult emotional situations to get to that point. But it showed me that there was definitely a truth to the biofield anatomy and how sound could be used to heal our bodies. So I got serious about pursuing Eileen's work by reading her books. I guess that's how serious I got. I didn't take any classes or training, but I read her books and I started experimenting with tuning forks on friends. And before I knew it, I was trying it out on some people in my podcast audience. And a couple of years passed, and now I think I'm pretty proficient at it, actually. I've definitely done a lot of sessions and had a lot of great results from people. I was just working with someone earlier today who we'd only done one session way back in February. And she was telling me about how after the first tuning session where we did a lot of third eye work for this individual, she saw her eye doctor and she was like a whole point improved on her vision, which makes sense because that's tied to the third eye. And that's the kind of thing tuning can do. There's not necessarily any guarantees or promises, right? But I've definitely seen eyesight get better for clients more than one time. That happens fairly often. So, been doing tuning for about 4 years then. Yeah. And it's a pretty good combo, podcasting and tuning and reading and researching and writing and living life. It's a good life.
Yeah, beautiful. So, which is your passion then, or like podcasting or energy work, or is there something else that's your passion in life?
Do I have to just pick one?
No, no.
Uh,
All of the above.
I would say that they are all things that I have a lot of enjoyment and aptitude with. This is me just being nitpicky, right? But I don't actually like the word passion because it means suffering. Did you know that? Like that's the original meaning of the word.
Oh, I didn't know that was the original meaning. I know it's often used as like the passion of Christ, and
Yeah. And that's
I
the
don't
context.
take it as that. Yeah.
Now, it's not
That
like a
makes sense.
totally negative word. It's just I'm a word nerd. So passion is like that which we suffer, but then suffer ends up being that which we allow. So the real meaning of that word. So with things that are our passions, we're willing to allow a lot of potential, personal suffering to have that in our life, or like we will give a lot for it. So it's not really a negative word. I was just kind of kidding around, but yeah, I don't know which one's my favorite. I'm the type of person that doesn't like to stick to just one thing. I like to have a lot going on. I like to constantly be jumping from one task to the next. So maybe I'm not the most efficient person, but I have a lot of fun. So they're both great. I think if I had to pick, like if I had to set one aside and only do the other, I would probably keep doing the podcast because that was the original. But the tuning would be hard to quit, man. It's nice to get that feedback from people about how it's helped them. And I think if there was a connecting link between the two, it would be that I'm really into puzzles, like putting the pieces together, seeing how things fit together. That tuning is like doing a puzzle with somebody.
Yeah.
The puzzle is their life and their belief system, and we get to collaborate on that. But and research and podcasting, I'm like, I love gathering all this information from different sources, different guests, and seeing how things connect, being able to fit them together into a bigger picture that maybe the guest didn't have the context for because they're in their lane. So, and then, the last couple of years, I'm just as intensely invested in my own personal research, like where that will go. Sometimes it shows up in people's interviews of me. And I have a newer podcast called Inner World where with my co-host Dylan Secotio, we do a lot of sharing of our own research to just our members only. And that research is in the fields of language, symbolism, etymology. And I'm really just endeavoring to find the best package to show people what my study of ancient mythology and the mystery school traditions of the old world has proven to me, that all of the gods and goddesses have resolved down into just the one God, and that was the intent of the system from the beginning, and that all of the world mythologies and religions are the exact same system and based on the same tenets and principles, and they just look different in different cultures. Or the thing with symbolism is a symbol means more than one thing, so or more than one symbol can mean the same thing, so it doesn't look that way to us. But it's hopefully not a futile quest, but I'm really hoping to make a dent in the Disneyfication of people's view of mythology and religion. And what I mean by that is like, not necessarily just Disney, right? But how when you do any kind of pop culture scanning of, say, like the Greek pantheon, you get this idea of basically like human beings walking around named Zeus and Athena and stuff, and that they they're just like us, but they have superpowers and yada yada yada. And it's just completely missing the whole point of what the mythos was for, what it was about. So doing my best to gather all the threads of that together, and maybe someday I'll be able to present it in a concise enough fashion that is convincing to a reader or listener, right? That it's all one thing.
Yeah, that's neat. The that kind of goes along with what I have found too, that my own thought is that all the world religions all had started with truth, the same truth, right? The truth, and was each down their own road became occulted in different ways and swayed in different ways and misread perhaps in many ways too, like you're talking about, but they all started at the same place.
Yeah, and then there's of course the intentional obscuring of truth or misleading of people. I think that that's kind of the pop culture mythology for sure is very misleading, especially when it's always just emphasized the like the terribleness and the flaws of the gods. You know, that's not a doesn't make for a really great role model for people at all. And especially the it's maybe not a popular opinion, right? But a lot of people will reject the more mainstream religion of, say, America, Christianity, and then take on a form of what they identify with as paganism or something. And it's cool, like whatever philosophy floats your boat, but they are the same thing. One of my favorite quotes is from the Reverend Robert Taylor, who wrote The Devil's Pulpit in the early 19th century, was an actual priest and went to actual jail for showing the astrotheology of all the world religions, that they're derived from star lore. And, he showed that he was fond of saying that the Christianity and paganism are as different as six and half a dozen. And the problem is, like, people will jump out of one side of the binary and into the other, be like, well, now I'm an Odinist, but they become just as sort of like militantly dogmatic and exclusive in their view of it. Like, this is the right one, and the Christians are the stupid ones. And it's not really constructive or helpful. And still, either side of that binary, people are kind of missing the point of the point or the meaning of the mythology. And what I've been really into lately is the world ages doctrine part of the mythology, which is the this kind of obscure in terms of people talking about it, that research, but there is a thread that connects the various systems about not only a succession of destroyed and regenerated worlds, but that they're similar, like that at a certain point in a cyclical fashion, the entire world gets destroyed by fire or water or both, and then is reformed in such a way that like everything happens again the way it happened before. And when I talk about this, I'm not saying that I believe that that's literally true, but that's what I've been looking at a lot lately, is finding where the fingerprints of that particular doctrine exist in the ancient writers. And it's just a trippy concept. So I like that about it.
Yeah, interesting.
Probably didn't expect me to talk about that.
No, but I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did, because I'd have to say the meaning of different languages and symbolism and mythologies and stuff isn't something I've been really super interested in. But I think it's the curiosity and the willingness and ability, the love of learning that is the key to all the religions, or the I don't know, the ability to get stuck in the religions too, because what I see in the ancestors, right? Our life that we have here continues after death. It's just in the same realm around us, or when they get when they're in the same realm around us, they're learning what they need to learn to see how the afterlife works and what they need to get out of there when they're ready. And then when they're in the oneness or the other realm, then it's like that's one of the joys there, is to continually learn and explore the truth and the expanded consciousness and expanded world and energies that there's no end to. And so I see it as that curiosity that is so great. Whereas I'll speak like for Christianity, but I'm guessing most religions are similar. It's the churches are often set up so they're pulling people in a lot, but you're supposed to stay there. And because of course there's money involved, or just friendships and everything, but you're supposed to believe what they're teaching or what you have there, and they don't like it when you move on, or when you keep learning and learning and no one else wants to learn it, and so you move on to go to other things. But I think it's that magnetism, that curiosity and learning of truth, that is a big part of truth, right? A big part of what our life here is supposed to be.
Exactly. I mean, if there was a single way to know the divine, it would be in the pursuit of truth. And the ancient philosophers, there was a maxim about reality that man is a little cosmos and the cosmos is a big man. So the study of the microcosm, which would be a single human being in their life, would give you a framework to try to understand and extrapolate out onto the macrocosm. And so that's part of probably why there's this belief in the succession of similar worlds, because there's the idea of reincarnation, that they're, a single life, you're born, you live, you die, and it starts over. And although there's maybe some differences, the general progression of that life is the same for each life, that you age, you develop in a certain way, in a certain order. So I'm just reading some of the comments. Good to see people here. The other part about it that I think is important to demystify for people is not just to get out of like dogmatic cults of more what you consider religious variety, but the religion of scientism itself, whether for good or ill, is actually based entirely in, at least in the cosmological tenets, in the so-called pagan or mystery school tradition. And that might sound shocking to people too, but like, we call science materialism, or what passes for the mainstream, right? But materialism goes back way further than modern scientific cosmology. Like in modern science, of course, materialism is referring to the belief that there's just matter, and that matter somehow produces consciousness rather than consciousness being the creator of matter. And that's almost like a chicken or an egg thing. But in the ancients, they had a belief that you could call materialism as well, based on that matter is itself eternal, that like the physical stuff of our universe always existed and always will exist with no beginning or end. And that in a certain point, basically like a mind awakens out of that chaotic matter that then shapes it and it gives it form and makes it into a world. And that is symbolized by either a boat, like Osiris being put on a boat by the god Typhon, who's like a devil figure, but also is literally a deluge, a flood. That's Typhon. Or of course, Noah in the ark. Noah, by the way, is the same word as nous or nous, which is the word for mind. The letter H at the end is easily swapped with the letter S in linguistics, right? So Noah is this great father, or this mind, that everything, all the materials for the next world are inside of his ark. or like the Mithras or Phanes or these other mythological figures that emerge out of a cosmic egg, and then all the materials of the cosmos are inside that egg. And where I'm going with this is, what's the Big Bang? The Big Bang says that all of the matter of the universe was condensed into a tiny infinitesimal singularity point. That's an egg, and then it explodes. And that's the cracking of the egg, and it goes on to become all the order of the cosmos. So why I think it's important is so that people can see, like, for some reason humanity has always had the ideas that I'm just kind of outlining the very basic introductory points of. They've always been part of our civilizations and cultures across the world, across time. And in a lot of cases, like in modern time, it's almost unconsciously so. Like it's basically unconsciously so. Why is that? Why have we had this idea forever in one form or another? And even to the point where we thought we got rid of the idea and we brought in something very sophisticated and modern that we call scientific materialism, but it's the exact same idea as what the ancients had. Why is that? Why do we keep producing this concept? To me, that's a big question. It's maybe important. It might tell us a little bit about who we are and why we're here. I don't have the answer to that, but that's kind of like part of what I'm searching for in all of this, is to figure that out. So also another part of the question of the eternality of matter, if matter always existed, like, why would you have that philosophy? I actually think that that's a more parsimonious philosophy than in the beginning God created like things out of nothing, ex nihilo. Because to me, if something exists, it exists, right? There's actually no such thing as non-existence. So it makes more sense to have the eternality of matter. And then that produced for the ancient philosophers a belief in the divinity of matter, because eternality is a attribute of the divinity. And that's another heretical idea that I would like to challenge, because what is so wrong with the idea that, like, the entirety of all of the physical stuff that we get to interact with in our existence and that supports our existence, and that we ourselves drive around and embody in these physical forms, why is there this constant perennial renewing of the idea that that's somehow like lower or dirty or bad or base? That's part of what I'm about challenging too, is the misconceptions of mythology. Like, the people, I call it pop culture Gnosticism, because it's not real knowing, but it is very popular amongst like truther crowds and communities, that the world is a prison and the souls are the divine spark of God trapped in matter by some kind of evil fake lesser God. Like, this is, I don't know how familiar you are with those concepts, but it's like super prominent amongst truthers that there's a demiurge that trapped humanity, and like the God of the Old Testament is really the devil. And everybody's missing the point with that stuff, and also creating a lot of like unnecessary negativity and fear. So part of why I like to talk about this stuff too is to challenge all that. But it essentially, there is, back to the ancestors of it all. One thing I like about the system, the ancients, was that the great father or mind that emerges out of the chaos, or is born out of the egg or the ark, and brings order to the cosmos, builds the world out of the material that it pre-existed, was the soul of the world that all souls come from. So this is actually both the Gnostic concept of the demiurge, but also the Christian concept of Jesus Christ, who is said to be the firstborn among the dead. That it's also Hermes, Mercury, Odin, all these other psychopomp figures of world mythology. And I am really curious about that idea. Why, why things got so kind of almost dulled down or watered down with the Jesus version of it, when it's actually much like, people will get kind of upset at you for talking about Jesus being the demiurge, or being Hermes, or being Odin, or whatever, or being Noah, same guy. But what I'm talking about is actually a much bigger and more powerful kind of concept of Jesus to begin with. That the first individuated being that came out of the source or the all is still in existence, is this like encompasses all souls in the world in this one soul, and dispenses individual souls from itself into bodies, and then takes them back into itself and back and forth again. And I think that that's a really cool idea, that there's, you know, it's a philosophy that people might point and like do the crossed fingers and be like pagan, but they're talking about they're talking about a philosophical logic for why that there's the concept of a savior or a son of God, and that it's there to help you, and that it's always a part of you and you grow out of it. And like, it's great. Like I'm into that too. I think that it makes perfect sense. I better stop though.
No, keep going. No, I'm
I'll let you
learning a
ask
lot.
questions instead.
But the one thought I had, one question that I'd had that I'll tell you what I have, my perception of your answer would be, and because I'd asked you about your passion, and then I was wondering, well, what fuels it? But to me, what I've heard you say, what fuels it is your curiosity about how things. And I would say that's what I meant. My curiosity fuels me, but my focus is on different. It's like on more specific, deeper spiritual connection things. But it's that I'm always, but it was also the biofield, because to me, the biofield is spiritual, right? You're surrounded by spiritual. You're working in the spirit being of the person, and guided by the great spirit that's in all of us. And so it's like my curiosity of, well, how does this work? Well, what am I going to find? Well, if I do this, what am I going to find? Or it's like, I love doing spiritual hypnosis, and from the hypnotic state, asking questions of the great spirit or specific ancestors that are in the oneness, or angels, or of myself, what I used to know. I mean, sometimes different aspects of this answer my questions. And it's like, it's my curiosity for how things work, how things really are, that fuel me. And so what do you think? Is that what fuels you? Or do you see it as something different?
Yeah, curiosity. You could definitely say it's curiosity. It's just exciting to me to find connections that kind of bring that validate everything at once, what in or find like what's true in things, especially in things that are so interpretative, like religious questions. That's exciting to me, is to find the answer that if I can just lead other people along the path of details or logic, that they could be like, oh, we've all been saying the same thing all along. Great. We no longer have to have theological arguments online. Like that would be awesome for me. But ultimately, yeah, it's just a big puzzle to figure out, which I think is fun. I think that's probably part of like the forgetting aspect of coming into life, is so that we can go back to the source and ponder like, wow, I thought it was like that. Wow. Or good job. You kind of had a pretty good understanding of things by the end there. Great. It's almost like a game. Well, it's definitely like a game, actually. It's absolutely a game. And it's a fun
Yeah,
game.
it is. It is. Well, it reminded me of it. It took several years. I should say, started coming out of the Christian religion,
Hmm.
probably in 2009 was when we started, and then we went into keeping it was a lot of the same Christian aspects, but we went into keeping the calendar by the sky clock, and first by the dark moon or sliver moon, and then by the full moon. And then we moved on from there. And at each step of the different processes, I was putting together a book. I was using PowerPoint and making little scenes and tying in points of different kinds for the different things that we had learned, and then the next thing we learned, I'd do another page. And so I had a thick notebook full of different things we'd learned. And then you get to a certain point and you look back and say, oh, I'm relearning that. what I thought I was really learning and thought was truth, then I'm here now and looking back and say, that's not truth. I'm here. And so in the future, I'm going to look back at here and say, oh, well, you were on the right track, but it's not all you thought it was, right? There's a lot more. And
yeah, that's why over the Oracle at Delphi, which is a famous old world mystery cult center, there's an inscription that said "Know thyself." Everybody hears that, "Know thyself," but they they leave out one of the other. There's 3 phrases up there, but one of the other ones that is usually left out is "Certainty brings ruin." Yeah, know thyself and know that for sure certainty brings ruin. So don't get too sure about things. And also, there is a bit of almost like they say the mystic swims in the same waters that the madman drowns in, or the schizophrenic person drowns in. And there is kind of a truth to that when you start to wrap your head around the big metaphysical ideas. I love how Carl Jung states it in his work, The 7 Sermons to the Dead. Not a very long read, but a really great, really mind expanding short little tract. And he's talking about the original sort of chaos that I was describing, like the eternality of matter. And he says, the nothing or fullness is called by us the pleroma. In it, thinking and being cease, because the eternal is without qualities. In it, there is no one, for if anyone were, he would be differentiated from the pleroma and would possess qualities which would distinguish him from the pleroma. And here's the best part, talking about the all that is, or the source. In the pleroma, there is nothing and everything. It is not profitable to think about the pleroma, for to do that would mean one's disillusion. Not disillusion like, being disenchanted, but like dissolution, like dissolve. So, don't think too much about the everything nothing burger, because you might just melt into it. And that's an experience you can have too. I mean, I think sometimes we have these moments where we have a thought that kind of makes it all click and figure it out, almost like the big question of life, reality, and everything. All of a sudden we grasp it for like a part of a second, and then it's like curtains fade to white. Like you start to feel like you're just phasing out of existence, like waking up from the dream of reality. And it's scary. You're like, no, I want to stay here. I have friends here. And you have to like tone it down and forget the thing again. So there is almost like a game to the whole thing where it's like, just come right up to the edge, but don't go into the pleroma yet. Stay here.
Yeah,
stay here. We need you here. Yeah. Yeah. But I love how Jung puts it. It's not profitable. I mean, that's coming from a guy who obviously thought a lot about the pleroma. So Jung would know.
He would know.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, funny. Well, while we're talking about the myths and symbolism and things, I had told you that during September and also March for the equinoxes, I call it Friend a Tree Week, to encourage people to connect with tree energy, to really feel it working in their bodies, feel it move in their bodies, and to know that our intentions that we hold, whether for ourselves or for the highest good of all, can be sent throughout the universe, because the trees are all connected through the microbiome of the earth, and you send it up the trees through all their energy, up and out their leaves, and it's broadcast then across the world, right? And so I'm trying to get that across to people. That's one thing
some of the ancient philosophers depicted the world itself as a big tree, which I like.
Yeah.
And that's the mind that, or the world soul that I'm talking about, would be like the trunk of the tree. We're just growing off of it. You know what I mean? Like we're a leaf And that energy of that leaf will fall, leaf and life are the same word, will fall to the ground off of the tree eventually and be absorbed back into the roots of the tree. You know, that's the world soul. That's the big mind, the great father. Good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything other, let's say, myths and things that come to mind about trees that would be interesting?
Good question. Well, there's, you know, there's all the savior figures that are like crucified on a tree or hung from a tree.
Mm,
That's part of it too, you know.
yeah.
But yet I'd have to skim my notes. Nothing's coming into mind off the top of my head. Of course, there is a lot about trees. Now, as soon as I let it go, I do think of something about how the deity Adonis, who is the Phoenician, that's the Phoenician name for like the sun god or the savior deity. It's like the Phoenician Jesus. And also Adonis is the name that the Old Testament gives to God in a lot of the original Hebrew of the text. We get like this King James version where everything's Lord and God, this and that. But most of the time they're calling either Elohim, which is plural, by the way. It's goddess is plural, not Lord. Or they're calling God Adonai, which is Adonis. And that's one of the ways that you can demonstrate that God in the Old Testament is actually the same as Jesus in the New Testament, because Adonai is born as a seed that falls from his mother, whose name is Mira or Myrrh. Now she's a tree because she broke the rules and copulated with a deity that her family didn't want her to or something. I may be getting the details wrong off the top of my head, but it's something just like that. And so she gets punished by being turned into a tree, the myrrh tree. Think like frankincense and myrrh, but her name is, you see how similar that name is to Mary, right? It's the same name.
Right.
So she gets turned into a tree, and then the fruits of her copulation are a seed that falls from the tree and goes into the underworld, and then from that sprouts into the beautiful solar deity Adonai, the god of the Old Testament. So that's important because not only does it show the syncretizes the Jehovah character with Jesus very directly, but it also shows that it's the same being as Kronos, because it's the corn myth, or the mythos of the seed is what we're talking about, which is about the perpetual renewal and cycles of life in both the micro and macrocosm. Because and why it's Kronos or time is that word, if you just you can learn a lot about words by just taking the vowels out, right? So you take the vowels out of Kronos, spell it the way you would in a language like Phoenician or Hebrew, and it's KRN or Kaf Resh Nun, QRN, KRN, and that's corn. It's the same word as corn. And a corn or kernel is a seed. So that's that's one of the perennial symbols of the deity or of God, is actually the seed itself. Because when you think about it, what is more symbolic of the mystery of God and the generative power of life than a seed? I mean, like this infinitesimally tiny little thing that could become a tree that outlives generations and generations of human beings and becomes gigantic. I mean, there's some trees that are so big. I mean, allegedly there's trees that were way bigger than what we have now. Way bigger. Like we may be in a time where everything's quite a bit smaller. So I like that a lot too. I guess I did have some stuff about trees, more about seeds, but like that mythos of the seed is an important version of the one story, the monomyth, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Oh, very cool. Have to think on that.
I'm really grateful for my people that popped in because I announced this kind of late notice. It's really good to see everybody here. I've missed you guys. Been a little offline lately, so good to see everybody chatting. Thanks for coming to hang with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. Thank you all.
Yeah,
Well,
we can
is
just
there?
take some deep breaths with it.
Oh, there you go.
Feels good.
It does. I find it stimulating. Learn things that I'm not up on. I know that a lot of people in your chat are very familiar with all the languages and symbolism and things you speak of. I feel like a newcomer. It's like so long in my life I was in the part of the religion, set in that, and it's not until I was older now that it's out of it, and it's like I have all these things to learn, and there's I was going to say there's not time, which isn't true, because since time will continue forever, but the things that I'm deeply interested in aren't taking me in those places yet, but it opens doors to things to think about and things to learn.
Yeah, there's a lot of times people's religious types get threatened by talking about mythology and religion in the way that I do. And I think that that's something that's a goal for me going forward, is to find the packaging that helps people feel, even that we're maybe in a more dogmatic view, feel excited about like, what if it was bigger than I thought? What if where I was at with it is okay and fine, and I can mostly pretty much keep that, but I could get bigger. Like it could be better. It could be more all encompassing. That's what I'm looking for right now in myself, is like the best way to, package information so that what might be threatening to people in the way that I've said it in the past is just like exciting to them instead. Because I don't want, whenever you talk about like, hey, Christianity isn't what you thought it was, it's actually paganism, or it's the same thing as paganism, it can, freak people out that have been in the pews for their whole life, but because they've also got paganism as a dirty word in their mind. But right, my point of it all is like, hey, you're in this view of it as a historical event that happened and is recorded in a book that it specifically happened just like that in real life. I'm saying like, this is a story that's always existed with humanity. It's always been there. And that before 2000 years ago, like it was always with us. So what's that about? Like, wouldn't it make more sense if our creator or our savior was making sure to seed the truth of reality, life, and existence or at least point us towards the mystery of it? Because that's, I think, the biggest part. I think that's the best way to describe it, is like, it's not that I'm delivering to you some sort of philosophical truth that is like absolute and telling you exactly how it is. Really, what the ancient mystery schools were pointing to was that it's a mystery. Like the truth is in the mystery itself. Mm-hmm. So the mystery has been seeded in our minds, in our art, in our cultures, for as long as we are aware of, for as long as humanity has existed in all parts and all places. And like, that's exciting. And what is the mystery? It is the generative power, the human generative power, or the generative power of nature. Like, there's nothing more mysterious than that. I'm about to become a father very soon, actually. So like, that for anyone out there that's had children, do you know how your body knew how to grow another body inside of it without you even needing to do much to guide the process other than keep yourself well? Like, do you know why there's a something instead of a nothing? Why there's so much incredible beauty, order, and harmony in the cosmos? I don't, you can say because God did it, but like, there's still a mystery to that. And I think the mystery is the beauty of our existence, like to chase it. So I'm totally into that.
Well, just like our goal in life, right? We hear it frequently, but it rings true to what you're saying, that it's not the end result, it's not your destination that it's really about, it's your journey, right? Your day to day. It kind of parallels that line of thought. So.
Yeah, you can kind of get a feel of how valuable your philosophy or religion is based on how your health and your life and the overall level of beauty within it is manifesting. That's for sure too. This might sound kind of funny, but like I have a personal filter on listening to people and their information, which says, would I be bummed if I had to trade lives with that person? Yes or no? So like if I would be bummed about having to trade lives with somebody, then I don't see a whole lot of profit in like taking their word for stuff, And that's kind of like, I think that's maybe that's conceited, but I think that's a safe filter people could put on. Like if it's not like I'm not saying you want to trade lives with people, but like, would you be bummed if you had to? Maybe think about whether or not you want to take on their worldview, because your life is a product of your worldview. I think that you've probably seen that in tuning folks as well, that sometimes you're tweaking their psyche to some level, like their sense of their personality or who they think they are. And then other times you're fixing their expectations and beliefs about what life and the world are. And then one flows into and out of the other, that you work on one, you work on the other. I think that that's what all the toxic media is really there for, all the 24-hour news cycle of, it's the next big disease. It's called EEE, which is a big joke because it spells out E. They're like apparently shutting things down in Vermont over EEE. Anyway, like all that fear and the next shooting is going to happen and blah blah blah, or like bad and worse, dumb and dumber for your political candidates and things like that. It's all worldview warfare. And that's huge. Like, just don't accept things that diminish your worldview, and then you're not going to be taking on the like almost demonic kind of attack style energy that the media is throwing at you, or maybe even just people in your life. So like, be aware of that. If there is one thing to leave people with, it's that you have the ultimate say in your worldview. Is a choice. I mean, at the end of the day, you're the only one that has your worldview, and don't let that be conditioned by all these sort of like artificial sources, when all you got to do is look out your window or step outside and look at the sky and be like, man, what's that? What's up there? Or you just like take everything you ever have been taught or chosen to believe or what have you about, say, just the sun. That's one thing that happens all the time when you start discussing how all of the deity figures are dressed up in solar symbolism, including the Son of God in Christianity. And then, someone might point at you and be like, sun worshiper. And I challenge you to just stop and be like, well, if I just deleted all the information I had in my memory banks about the thing called the sun, I didn't even have a word or name for it. And I just stood there with like a pure beginner consciousness and looked at that thing and felt the rays of it and honestly asked myself the question, what is that? I have no idea what that is. Like, whoa, what is that? Like then you're back into the mystery, which is where all the power is at. Because when we explain things, we explain it away. I mean, how often do you see that again in tuning, right? Somebody has an emotional emergence, right, of an emotional reaction to a thing, and then they explain it away. They explain it away, and it literally goes away, like off balance in their energy field, rather than being felt fully and processed. So like, go back into the mystery of it though, and then all the power is back, because we walk around outside, all the time under that sun and don't have any sense of awe or reverence to it.
Mhm.
Or we even have these, we've been told these things like we shouldn't, because then we'd be sun worshipers.
Right.
But like, really though, if you just sit into the mystery of that fiery orb in the sky, it's like, whoa, what is that? That thing is amazing. That I'm so glad that thing is here. That thing feels great. Like that's what I'm trying to talk about. Like getting back into that sweet spot of like, whoa, yeah, this is awesome. What is this? That's where it's at.
That you find in all those different stories, throughout life, throughout ages.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. I have, there's PK has a question for me in the chat, and I think he's asking, or she is asking, just for me to think about, that they probably already know the answer, but you're the one that knows the words. Chance, is the difference between in wordage or symbology is one and monad the same?
I think PK is asking, I think, about like the way that you describe the oneness, right? And there's a philosophical concept called the monad, which is the basically like the idea of a single point of existence, or the pleroma. I don't know. I think he should just clarify, like, help Carla understand what you specifically mean by monad, because what you're saying, what's the difference between the one and the monad? I mean, linguistically, you're saying what's the difference between one and one? The 1 minus 1 is 0. I think we answered the question. It was a math problem.
Well, that's what I thought he meant, that they were the same, but I didn't know. I thought, well, maybe there was something deeper that I just don't get.
He might have meant something deeper. He's a big thinker, really good dude.
But like in the oneness, just to address how I see the what I call the oneness would be what other people might refer to as heaven or something in the Christian perspective. But it's like it's both the all and in the individuals at the same time. I mean, like if I tune in and ask, I only want to feel the whole. I only want to feel what I would call God or universal spirit, as I usually refer to as the whole. I can feel that vibration, which is slightly different than the vibration of the individuals. And like the angels have a different vibration if I'm just tuning into them, and the ancestors there have a different vibration. And in hypnosis, I've experienced being in the oneness and being part of that, but separate at the same time, as well as all of it. And I don't know, it's all good. It's all interesting. It's all just observation of, oh, I feel this, or if I ask for this and I feel this. It's just exploring perceptions and possibilities, I guess.
So Carla, there's something, because I know we were going for about an hour, but there's something that I just remembered, that because we're on your Ancestral River YouTube channel and your Health Energy podcast, I thought I think I've mentioned this story to you before on my own channel, but and my audience will probably have heard it before, but it's still worth maybe bringing up. That one of my favorite biofield tuning moments that it had to do with the ancestral energy, and this is a little bit simpler than actually interacting with a specific ancestor, which has happened before too. Although I don't go out of my way to do that as so much as that's something that is almost like your specialty, right? But I had a tuning client a little while back, earlier in the year, that had an onset of heart palpitation, tachycardia experiences. So their heart would just randomly start racing, kind of like in a panic, and it would stay that way for long periods of time in a very alarming and uncomfortable fashion. And it emerged, and they hadn't had any problems like that before. And what I found in their energy field was a experience of an ancestor that had been in the bombings of London, and they had been alone as a mother there, while their husband was off to the war. So basically, what I found that was interesting about that was this person, their experience of lockdowns that happened a few years ago was moving away from their body as memories do, like the rings of a tree, the way the biofield is constructed. And that memory, that lockdown trauma memory, actually crossed over the ancestral river on the maternal side where this trauma was at.
Right.
So when they conjuncted the lockdown trauma and the ancestor trauma, that's when the exact time that the individual started having this reaction of heart problems, heart palpitations to the extreme.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we found that and we resolved that, the issue went from like a 9 out of 10 to like a 2 or 3 out of 10. And then in a second session, we had another ancestor type experience come up. So she was 2 for 2 with that type of thing that brought it down to more like a 0 or a 1 in terms of it being a problem in her life. And that experience was cool too, because the second session we ended up working with her. It wasn't her direct ancestor. It was actually her husband's mother. But I found this time in her timeline that was a back left heart chakra. But interesting, bring that up again, where she had been affected. The way I described it to her, I was like, "There's this, you're at this age, sometime in your early 20s. I don't remember exactly the time it was for her, but she had been affected by someone that she loved a lot, going through a big period of grief or loss. It wasn't her grief or loss, but it was someone close to her. And it ended up being her husband's mother's death. And how that was coming up at the present was like, that mother-in-law had died young, and her current health issues that had come out of the blue for her were triggering that memory of her own mother-in-law dying kind of out of nowhere, out of a sudden health problem, and giving her a lot of this fear of like leaving her own family and children bereaved like that. Like that was a big cause of the fear that was getting the heart going even more, building on compounding the problem. But what was so cool about us finding that, resolving the energetics of that so that she wasn't getting into those panics, was that right before we began that tuning session, she was waiting for the session to begin in a guest room in her house, and she saw this picture of her mother-in-law that needed to be put into a frame that had been sitting there waiting to be framed for months. And she was thinking like all the time she would, see it and be like, I need to reframe that photo. I need to reframe that photo. So right before the session, she just happened to finally get around to reframing this photo of her mother-in-law. And then in the session, we reframed her memory of her mother-in-law. Yeah. And I was like, that is the kind of synchronicity that you can't even imagine until you start doing stuff like this. That's the kind of synchronicity that gives you the extra oomph of like, we really did achieve a type of healing for you. You really did resolve something energetically that's going to impact your life and your health in a big positive fashion. And that mother-in-law who's, passed on and passed over was helping you the whole time. Like, she doesn't want to be your problem or like her memory be a trauma for you. She wants to be a source of strength and support and love for you and your family that she's a matron of. So it was cool. Like I just loved working with that particular individual. Both sessions were great with her. And there's more synchronicities than that even with that particular client. But I figured since we're on the Ancestral River channel, I should tell one of my favorite ancestor tuning stories that I had.
Oh, I'm glad you did. Yeah, very much. Yeah. Back to the topic of the perpetual synchronicities.
Bringing it back around.
When you're looking, I've started, I've done it a month now, but at bedtime, right before I fall asleep and first thing when I wake up in the morning, it's like I have this list of 8 things maybe that I go over. It's like, well, what amazing things are going to happen to me today? How's my united guidance system going to guide me? How am I going to feel the support of the universe? And so on and so forth for for all these different questions pertaining to different aspects of my life, but it's that curiosity of setting the expectation every day to watch for those synchronicities that spirit brings, that our life brings about, that makes for that perpetual learning and the perpetual connection with source.
Oh, yeah. And, one other thing I can do to advocate for like my own type of work, people to follow it or do their own version of it, is symbolic literacy is a synchronicity enhancer. That's one of the things I think people get out of content like on the InnerVerse channel, because our, spirit guides, our higher self, what have you, God speaks through a multidimensional language of symbolism. Absolutely. So whenever we can upgrade our symbolic literacy, not only does it constitute psychic self-defense against a lot of the weird stuff that is attempted to be seeded into your unconscious through media, but also, and by the way, that's no small point, like symbolic literacy is psychic self-defense. Take that one and internalize it. That's a real truth. But you have a wider lens through which to interpret the events of your life symbolically, not just symptoms as symbols like we do in energy work, but like that everything you experience in your life could be interpreted akin to a dream interpretation or analysis, not just the stuff that happens to you when you're asleep, but like everything all the time. And when you start to have a more multivalent comprehension of symbolism, you will see the message in things that you might have missed previously. And like you were saying, the looking for synchronicity makes you be in it more, and catching them gives you an energetic hit or boost that like attracts more to you. And that's part of it too. Like being in the perpetual flow of synchronicity is that you might want, if you're struggling with that, maybe upgrade your language through which synchronicity can speak to you through, and B, go out of your way to look for it more. Even if that means like pausing, reflecting, or journaling or things like that. But ask yourself, where's the synchronicity in this moment? How is my inner world reflected in my outer world today? And you'll find it. You ask and you shall find. Seek the truth and the truth will seek you.
Yeah, it's amazing the things that have happened in this last month since I've been doing that. It's just like, it makes it magical, more and more magical. And it's awesome. Yeah.
It is awesome.
It is. Life is. I think, Chance, we can get ready to close today, but I was going to put my little banner up for anybody that would like to like it and subscribe. And Chance, just in case for other people who might view the channel later that don't know about you, you want to tell your website and other social media things that they might look for to find you?
Oh, thank you. Yes, it is InnerVersePodcast.com. That is my website, and you can find my tuning services through there as well. There's do you mind can I screen share on here?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Right. So you might have to allow it to come up or bring it up, right?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So here's my website. And if you come to my website and go to this Get Tuned tab, InnerVersePodcast.com/sound-healing. This is where you can book a session right here at the top. But if you scroll down, and I think your audience will like this because you are a tuner yourself, and feel free to send people to this as a resource that are curious, Carla. You scroll down, I give a kind of really basic synopsis of what tuning is. And then right here in this section, I have the entire biofield anatomy expanded out into helpful infographics.
Oh,
so
nice.
Here you can see the root left and right, the sacral left and right. This will give you a great roadmap to understand better what might be going on if you're having a particular dis-ease or discomfort or health challenge, and where you might start to look in terms of your emotional or belief system worlds. And so I I designed all these images. I want people to use it and know about it. I don't want to just do tunings on people. I want human beings to claim their birthright of knowing how their energetic anatomy works. So that's all on here, as well as where people can book a session and video content I've done on it. So, just want people to know about that. It's a helpful resource, I think.
Yes, absolutely. Very good. Thanks for sharing. Yeah. Thanks so much for being on, Chance. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your vast knowledge to help us all understand life more and to look for those synchronicities everywhere. Yeah. So thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll catch you next week.
Thank you, Carla. Much love, everybody.
Bye-bye.